How's it going, you awesome bunch of bakers? Hope you're having a great day so far. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're making brioche cinnamon and coffee buns, another great addition to our brioche recipe collection. So let's go to the kitchen and get started. We have made something similar in the past, but never with brioche dough. And ever since I published my no-knead brioche recipe, I wanted to use this dough in another application. And this is definitely a great use for it. Super soft and puffy buns, layered with a paste of cinnamon, coffee, sugar and butter, resulting in great flavor plus great texture. And they're even beautiful to look at, plus they're easy to make. So what more could we ask for? After watching this video, you'll be able to make these too. So let me show you how it's done. Let's start with the ingredients for the dough. We'll need some white bread flour, yeast, salt, sugar, softened butter and eggs. Unlike my previous no-knead brioche recipe, this one has double the ingredients. But to make the buns, you only need half the dough. I decided to make a double batch, so I can use the other half for another project. So if you want to, you can halve the recipe for the dough. The process will be almost exactly the same, except one adjustment, which I'll explain later. Onto the equipment, we'll need a bowl, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe, a spatula, a brush, and we'll need a rolling pin and a whisk. The whisk is the perfect tool for no-knead bread making, and specifically for this recipe, it is essential. Okay, let's get to it. First things first, temperature control. My kitchen is pretty hot at around 27 degrees Celsius or 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so I want my eggs to be on the cooler side. Now if you had watched my recent temperature control video, you may think that these eggs are too cold, but remember that the softened butter in this recipe makes up a significant amount of the dough, so it will help raise the temperature. Right, so in a large bowl, combine the eggs, the yeast, the salt and the sugar, and then give it all good whisking. You want to dissolve the salt and sugar completely. If you are using active dry yeast, I would suggest letting the mix sit for around 10 minutes after you whisked it up before adding the flour. This will give the yeast some time to hydrate and activate properly. Okay, the next step is to add 8 tablespoons of flour. If you're making half the recipe, you should add only 4 tablespoons of flour, of course. Whisk in the flour until the mix is nice and smooth, and then continue by adding the butter. Doing it this way prevents the butter from splitting. It helps us with distributing the butter evenly throughout the dough. As of yet, this is the best method I've found for adding large amounts of butter to no-knead dough. I'm sure some of you will say, why not melt the butter? Now I'd say that could make it too warm, and anyway it's soft enough at room temperature, especially in summer. Now if it's very cold in your kitchen, you may want to melt it, but do let it cool down a bit before you use it. Okay, so after adding the remaining flour, grab your scraper and mix this to a dough. Mix until there's no dry flour left. It'll be pretty sticky and messy, so use wet hands when handling it. And just look at this dough, it's so loose, it has no structure. Let's get it in a clean bowl and take its temperature, see where we're at. We were aiming for around 24 to 25 degrees Celsius, which is 75 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. If your dough is above this temperature, you should refrigerate it right away. But if the temperature is correct, leave it out at room temperature, cover it up, and leave it to rest for 20 minutes. In order to build up the gluten in this dough, we'll need to fold it a few times. In a no-knead bread recipe, folding replaces kneading. You can find a full no-knead guide in the Principles of Baking playlist. Any bread recipe can be made using this method. Okay, to give the dough the first fold, dust it with flour, pop it out on the table with the smooth side down, then stretch it over the middle, going around in a circle, and this time go around a couple times because this dough is very stretchy. Finally flip it smooth side up, round it against the table, pop it back into the bowl, and now you can start chilling it down. And we are still going to keep the 20-minute interval between folds. So take the dough out of the fridge after 20 minutes of chilling and perform the second fold. This time you're not going to need any flour. As you can see, this dough is not sticky at all. The second fold is performed exactly the same as the first one. And after rounding the dough, pop it back into the bowl, cover it up and chill it down for 20 minutes again. And after the second chilling stage, you can perform the third fold. And you may say, that's a lot of folding, but remember, this dough is 40% butter and all the liquid is eggs. We should be lucky this is even possible. Okay, after the third fold, pop the dough back into the fridge for 20 minutes yet again. This was the final chilling stage. Now, if you have made the whole recipe, weigh the dough and divide it in half. As I said earlier, I'm using one half for the buns and the other half for another project. But if you only made half the dough, then instead of dividing it, simply give the dough another fold, which will be fold number 4. Here I'm shaping the divided pieces of dough into balls, which is also like giving the dough a 4th fold. So basically, no matter what you do, you want to give this dough 4 folds in total. But that's about all we need to do to make this brioche based dough. From here it goes into cold fermentation, and then on the next day you can use it for any project that you like. We'll pop these bad boys in the fridge for around 24 hours. To turn this dough in cinnamon and coffee buns, we'll need some soft butter, sugar, cinnamon, instant coffee powder, an egg for brushing the buns before they go in the oven, and some sugar and water to make a glaze to brush on after they come out of the oven. Let's start by making the cinnamon and coffee paste. In a bowl, combine the sugar, the cinnamon, the coffee, and give it a good mix. Then add the softened butter and mix until everything is nice and smooth. You could adjust the recipe. Instead of using cinnamon and coffee, you could add the same amount of cocoa powder for chocolate buns. Or you could even add some grated chocolate, or use Nutella or some other kind of spread. No matter what you use, the shaping process will still be the same. So when you're ready to proceed, get your dough out of the fridge. As you can see, it's puffed up pretty well. It's been fermenting for 24 hours. Dust the table and the dough with flour generously and roll it out to a large rectangle. Don't worry about precise measurements, just roll it out nice and large and make it as straight edged as you can. Next up, dot the filling all around the dough and then spread it out in a nice even thin layer. And leave a little gap at the top. We'll brush it with water and stick it to the outside of the folded dough. It'll just keep everything in place and make this thing easier to handle. You don't need a lot of water, just dip your fingers in there and brush them lightly against the dough. That's all it takes. Once again, make sure everything's nice and straight, and now we can fold this dough up. You want to visually divide the dough into 3 horizontally, then take the bottom third and fold it over. Pat it down, make sure it's nice and straight, then take the top third and fold it down. And again, pat it down, make sure everything's nice and straight. After folding, dust the dough with flour, dust the table a little bit more again, grab your rolling pin and roll this dough out a little bit wider. You want it to be almost double as wide as it is. Now we need to cut this into 24 equal strips. I'd suggest trimming the ends off because they're mostly empty. If you have a pizza wheel, use it, it's a very handy tool here. But you can certainly do this with a knife, just don't mess up your table. I like to first divide the dough into 6 and then divide each piece into 4. Each bun is made out of 4 strips, we're making 6. Usually the middle part of the dough will be thicker and fuller, so to keep things equal, you can swap some of the outside strips with the middle strips. Okay, it's shaping time, and I think you'll be best off watching my hands and following, but I'll try to give my best instructions. Lay down 2 strips horizontally and 2 strips vertically across the 2 horizontal strips. Then cross over the 2 strips at the top left corner and the 2 strips at the bottom right corner. Now take the top left strip and fold it over the top right strip, and then do the same with the following 3 strips. Once you have gone full circle, repeat the same steps in the opposite direction. If the strips are a bit short, just pull them out. You should end up with something like this. To finish the shaping, tuck the loose corners underneath the bun. And there you go, that's how you do a 4-strand braid. We have made similar buns in the past, and I even have a video for a challah braider like this. So you can certainly use the shaping method for other types of dough too. Okay, after shaping, place your buns on a non-stick paper lined tray. Make sure there's plenty of space between them because they will spread out quite a lot. You could also place them in large muffin cases. That way you'll get taller buns. My kitchen's pretty warm, at around 25 degrees Celsius, 77 degrees Fahrenheit, and the buns are quite small, so they warmed up quickly too. Final proof took between an hour and an hour and a half. During the final hour of fermentation, preheat the oven, 160 degrees Celsius, fan on, and that's 320 Fahrenheit. These things are puffed up beautifully. They won't be very wobbly, but when I do the poke test, you can see how delicate they are. They're definitely ready for the oven, but there's one more thing we need to do before we put them in there. Give them a nice egg glaze. And remember, they're quite fragile, so brush them lightly. You could also double glaze them if you want to, or whatever you do. After glazing, pop these bad boys in the oven. They'll take around 20 minutes to fully bake. Make the sugar syrup just before they come out of the oven. Combine the sugar and the water and bring them up to a boil. And as soon as the buns come out of the oven, brush them with the boiling hot syrup. It'll give them a beautiful shine, it'll make them softer, it'll make them stay softer for longer. And it makes them nice and sticky too. And there you go, that's how I make brioche braided cinnamon and coffee buns. The coffee flavor comes through nicely and it works great with the cinnamon. They're super soft and they look great. Remember that you can use this brioche dough for pretty much any brioche project. And you'll find plenty of ideas in the brioche playlist. So what do you think this recipe, and what's your favorite use of brioche dough? Let me know down in the comments. You want to see more videos like this one? Click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.